Imagine this. You've built your whole life around principles, convictions, and a mission larger than yourself. You've traveled across the country, spoken to thousands, debated, inspired, and fought for what you believe in. But late at night, when the microphone is turned off and the stage lights dim, you realize there is something missing. The victories don't fill the quiet moments. The applause doesn't warm your soul when the world grows silent. That's where Charlie Kirk's journey toward love begins. At the edge of everything he thought he already had, searching for what his heart was quietly longing for. Charlie grew up with a deep sense of purpose. From a young age, he understood that life was not just about drifting. It was about anchoring yourself in truth. Those convictions shaped his career and his path. But even the strongest convictions can't replace companionship. He had seen so many leaders rise only to stumble, not because of their mission but because of what, or who, they lacked at home. He promised himself he wouldn't repeat that mistake. He wanted to find not just a partner but a wife who shared his values, someone who would not be intimidated by his calling but strengthened by it. Their story began quietly, without cameras, without speeches, and without headlines. Charlie first noticed her in the most unexpected of places, a small community gathering where faith was the thread tying everyone together. He wasn't looking for her, not that day. He was there to speak about purpose and the next generation, but in between words and thoughts, his eyes caught hers. She was different, not because she tried to stand out, but because she didn't. She wasn't swayed by the noise of the world. She radiated a calm strength that made him pause. He remembered thinking, this feels different. This isn't just someone I'll meet and forget. This feels like someone who could change everything. Her name was Erica. And though their first interaction was brief, a polite introduction, a few words exchanged about the event, something lingered. Charlie left that evening with her name etched in his memory, and a question that would stay with him. Was this the kind of woman I had been praying for without even realizing it? In the weeks that followed, Charlie found his thoughts returning to her. It wasn't infatuation in the shallow sense. It was something deeper, something that made him curious. He had met many people through his work, brilliant thinkers, passionate activists, even people who admired him, but none of them had struck him with this mix of grace and groundedness. When they finally spoke again, it wasn't in a rushed setting. It was a quiet conversation after a church service. He had deliberately lingered, and she happened to be there too. Their exchange started casually, about faith, about community, but slowly, it deepened. Charlie discovered that Erica wasn't impressed by titles or fame. She wanted to know about him as a person, not as a public figure. That night, as they parted ways, Charlie felt a spark of certainty. He didn't believe in coincidences. To him, meeting Erica again wasn't random, it was providence. Over the next few months, their paths crossed more often, and Charlie found himself drawn to her quiet wisdom. She wasn't loud, but when she spoke, her words carried weight. She had a way of seeing the world not just for what it was, but for what it could be, and that resonated deeply with Charlie's vision for life. It wasn't long before he realized he wanted to pursue her intentionally. And in his heart, he knew he had to do it right. He had watched too many relationships fail because they were built on fleeting attraction rather than shared values. Charlie wanted a foundation that could endure storms, a marriage that would not only last but thrive. So he did what he always believed a man should do. He sought her out with honesty. He told her plainly that he wasn't interested in games or temporary emotions. He was looking for a wife, a partner, someone who would walk with him not just through mountaintops but through valleys. At first, Erica hesitated, not because she doubted his sincerity, but because she understood the weight of what he carried. Being with Charlie meant more than just being with a man. It meant standing beside someone constantly in the public eye, constantly challenged, constantly pulled in many directions. Could she handle that? Would she want that? Charlie respected her caution. He knew the question wasn't small, but he also believed that love rooted in faith could handle anything. So he gave her time, not pressuring her, but proving through consistency that he meant every word. Their courtship unfolded quietly. They would meet after church, share meals in tucked-away restaurants where no one bothered them, and walk through parks discussing everything from scripture to politics to the meaning of family. Those walks became sacred moments. Charlie found that with Erica, he didn't need to perform. He didn't need to carry the weight of the world in every sentence. He could simply be himself. And she embraced that. It was during one of those long conversations that Erica revealed something that sealed Charlie's conviction. She said, "I don't just want to marry someone I can love. I want to marry someone I can respect. Someone I can stand with when life gets hard. If it's just love without respect, it won't last. But if it's both, then nothing can break it." Those words hit Charlie deeply. He knew then that Erica wasn't just someone he wanted in his life. She was the one he had been waiting for. The proposal didn't happen in a grand ballroom or a crowded arena. It happened quietly, intentionally, the way everything between them had begun. Charlie chose a place meaningful to both of them, a spot near the water where they had once walked and prayed together. The evening was soft, the sky painted in hues of gold and purple. As they stood side by side, Charlie spoke from his heart, telling her how she had changed his life, how her strength and faith had given him a vision for a future beyond himself. When he knelt down, Erica's eyes filled with tears, not because she was surprised, but because she had known this was where they were heading. She said yes, not with hesitation, but with the steady confidence of someone who knew she was stepping into a covenant, not just a commitment. Their engagement became a season of preparation, not just for a wedding but for a marriage. They didn't just talk about colors or flowers. They talked about values, about raising children, about how to protect their union when challenges came. For Charlie, every day with Erica was proof that God had answered prayers he had barely known how to articulate. When their wedding day arrived, it was both simple and profound. The ceremony was filled with family, friends, and faith. Charlie remembered standing at the altar, waiting, his heart pounding not from nerves but from overwhelming gratitude. And when Erica walked down the aisle, radiant in her gown, he thought to himself, "This is it. This is the beginning of everything I've prayed for." As they exchanged vows, Charlie felt the weight and beauty of what they were promising. To love, to honor, to remain faithful. Not just in words, but in action, in sacrifice, in daily choices. When the pastor declared them husband and wife, Charlie knew his life had changed forever. That night, as the celebration wound down, Charlie held Erica's hand and whispered, "This is just the start. We're not just building a marriage, we're building a life, a family, a legacy. And nothing will shake it, because it's built on more than just us. It's built on him." For Charlie, meeting Erica wasn't just about finding love. It was about finding the other half of his purpose. Together, they weren't just two people in love, they were two lives intertwined, ready to face whatever the world would throw their way. And deep down, Charlie knew, this was the greatest blessing of all. Marriage doesn't begin and end with a wedding day. The vows are spoken, the rings are exchanged, the pictures are taken, but real marriage begins the morning after, when the flowers have wilted, the guests have gone home, and two people wake up side by side with a lifetime of choices ahead of them. For Charlie and Erica, the foundation of their marriage was faith, and that foundation would shape every decision they made together. From the beginning, Charlie believed that the strength of their union wasn't in their personalities or their shared interests. It was in the covenant they had entered before God. He often said to Erica, "If our marriage depends on us, it will fail. But if it depends on him, it will last." Those words became their anchor. They began their mornings together in prayer. Even in the busiest seasons, when Charlie was traveling for work and Erica was holding down their home, they found time to connect spiritually. Sometimes it was a long devotion, other times just a few minutes on the phone before a flight. But the point wasn't length, it was consistency. They knew that prayer wasn't just a ritual, it was the glue that kept them aligned. Faith wasn't just something they practiced on Sundays. It became the lens through which they viewed every part of their marriage. Finances, decisions, even disagreements, they always came back to the question, what honors God in this? That question changed the way they fought, the way they forgave, the way they grew. One evening, during their first year of marriage, they faced a test that could have easily shaken them. Charlie had been working non-stop, his schedule overloaded, his mind stretched thin. Erica, patient as always, had carried the weight at home, but the exhaustion showed. One night, sitting at the kitchen table, she said softly, "Charlie, I need you. Not just your presence in this house, but your heart. I know what you do matters, but if we lose this, if we lose us, it won't matter how many stages you stand on." Her words cut deep. Charlie realized then that love wasn't just about providing or protecting, it was about prioritizing. That night, they prayed together and made a commitment. No matter how busy life became, they would never let their marriage drift into the background. They began setting boundaries. Charlie learned to say no to some invitations, understanding that his first ministry was at home. Erica, in turn, embraced the sacrifices his calling required, but she knew she wasn't invisible. She was his partner, his anchor. Their rhythm wasn't perfect, but it was intentional. They also sought community. For Charlie and Erica, marriage wasn't something to navigate alone. They joined small groups at church, surrounded themselves with mentors, and opened their lives to accountability. They wanted to learn from those who had walked the road longer than they had, couples who had weathered storms and emerged stronger. One mentor couple, married for over 40 years, gave them advice that became a cornerstone. The husband said, "The secret isn't avoiding storms, it's holding hands through them. If you fight the storm instead of each other, you'll always win." That wisdom stuck with them, shaping the way they approached challenges. Over time, their marriage became a testimony not just to their love but to the power of faith to sustain love. Friends and even strangers noticed. People would often say, "There's something different about you two. What is it?" And their answer was always the same: "It's not us. It's God in us." As the years passed, Charlie and Erica's bond deepened. They learned to celebrate the small moments, the quiet dinners, the late-night walks, the laughter over simple things. They discovered that romance wasn't just in grand gestures but in daily kindness. Charlie would leave Erica notes reminding her how much she meant to him. Erica would surprise him with his favorite meals after long trips. Those little acts of love became threads that wove their life together. But faith wasn't just about joy, it was about endurance. There were seasons when life tested them, when losses came, when pressures mounted. Yet through it all, their covenant held firm. They leaned on Scripture, reminding each other of promises greater than any circumstance. One night, after a particularly difficult season, Charlie turned to Erica and said, "You know what I've realized? The world will always pull at me, but this, our home, our marriage, this is sacred. This is where I find strength. This is where I see God's goodness most clearly." Erica smiled, her eyes full of the same quiet strength that first drew him to her. "And this is where we win," she whispered. For them, marriage wasn't a fairy tale. It was work, sacrifice, and daily surrender. But it was also joy, laughter, and the kind of love that only grows deeper with time. Their marriage, rooted in faith, wasn't perfect, but it was unbreakable. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that whatever storms would come, they were ready. Because their love wasn't built on shifting sand, it was built on the rock. Charlie Kirk had always believed that faith, love, and loyalty were the pillars of a meaningful life. He spoke about them in countless speeches across college campuses and on national stages, but living them in the intimacy of family was something entirely different. As his career grew, sometimes too quickly for comfort, the storms inevitably followed. Harsh criticism, personal attacks, and the constant weight of carrying the expectations of millions pressed down on him. Yet in the heart of those storms, it wasn't a stage, microphone, or crowd that kept him steady. It was the warmth of home. It was Erica. It was family. He often remembered the early years of his marriage when everything was new. New arguments, new laughter, new prayers whispered at night. The fire of love was bright, but it was tested quickly. Not long after their wedding, Charlie found himself at the center of political and cultural storms, his name on headlines, his voice dissected and sometimes distorted. "Do you ever get tired of it?" Erica had asked one night as they sat together in their modest living room, the glow of a single lamp between them. She looked at him with a quiet concern, her hands folded on her lap, her wedding ring catching the soft light. "All the time," Charlie admitted. "But then I think of you. I think of us. I think of the family we're building. That's what makes it worth it." Erica leaned closer, placing her head on his shoulder. "Then let's promise each other something. No matter how loud the world gets, no matter how harsh the storms are, this, what we have right here, will always be our safe place." That promise would become their anchor. And over the years, they would return to it again and again. Charlie often marveled at how Erica lived out quiet strength. While he carried the weight of public battles, she carried the weight of private ones. The lonely hours when he was gone, the judgment of strangers who didn't know her heart, the strain of raising their family under constant spotlight. Yet, instead of bitterness, Erica met those challenges with grace. She prayed for Charlie daily, sometimes without him even knowing. In whispered prayers at night, she asked God to cover him with wisdom, to shield his heart, and to soften the blows he endured. One evening, after a particularly brutal week of media attacks, Charlie came home later than expected. He walked in, shoulders heavy, his usually sharp eyes clouded with exhaustion. Erica greeted him at the door. She didn't ask about the interviews or the controversies swirling online. Instead, she simply wrapped her arms around him and whispered, "You're home. That's all that matters." Charlie felt something inside him release. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her hair. "Yes, you do," she replied gently. "Because God chose us for each other. And as long as we remember that, the storms can't take us down." Their foundation in faith became even more visible when they started raising their children. Charlie, who had spent so much of his life challenging young people to stand firm in their values, found himself learning the art of patience through fatherhood. Late-night cries, messy mornings, and endless questions from curious little minds reminded him that leadership started at home. One Saturday morning, as the sun streamed into their kitchen, Charlie was sitting at the table with his son, trying to explain the importance of telling the truth. His son's small hands played with a toy car, his wide eyes listening intently. Erica stood at the counter, smiling softly at the scene. "Daddy, do you ever get scared?" his son suddenly asked. Charlie paused, his throat tightening. He thought of the threats he had faced, the nights he had stayed awake wondering if his next speech would bring more hatred. But then he looked at his boy and said, "Yes. But courage isn't about not being scared. It's about standing firm because your family, your faith, and your God are worth it." Erica wiped a tear from her eye as she placed breakfast on the table. Later, she told Charlie, "That's the kind of legacy you're leaving. Not just for the world, but for them." The storms didn't stop coming. There were seasons when the criticism became deafening, when even friends seemed to step back, when it felt like the ground beneath them might give way. But in those seasons, Charlie found that home wasn't just a refuge, it was a fortress. Erica reminded him daily of who he was beyond the headlines. His children reminded him of the joy in simple things, a game of catch in the yard, bedtime stories whispered in the dark, laughter over spilled cereal. One night, during one of the hardest seasons of his career, Charlie sat on the porch with Erica. The air was heavy, the stars hidden behind a blanket of clouds. "Sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it," he confessed. "What if I'm failing them? Failing you?" Erica reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "Charlie, listen to me. The storms will always come. But we don't measure our life by the storms. We measure it by how we stand together in them. And we are standing. Every day you come home to us, every prayer we lift together, every lesson we teach our kids, that's victory. That's faith in action." Tears welled in Charlie's eyes as he kissed her hand. "You're my greatest strength, Erica. You and the kids, you're why I keep going. And you're ours," she said simply. Years later, when their children were older, Charlie reflected on those early promises. He stood in front of a crowd, delivering yet another speech. But in his heart, the words weren't just for the audience. They were for Erica, for his children, for the family who had given him the courage to face every storm. "Everything I have," Charlie said that night, "everything I fight for, starts at home. Family isn't just the foundation of society, it's the foundation of my life. When the storms come, and they always do, it's faith and family that keep me standing. I could lose every title, every speech, every headline. But if I still have my family, I have everything." The audience erupted in applause, but Charlie's eyes searched for Erica. When he found her in the crowd, smiling through tears, he knew the truest victory wasn't on the stage. It was in the quiet strength of their love. It was in the laughter of their children. It was in the promise they had made so many years before, that no matter how loud the world got, their love would always be their safe place. And so, through every storm, Charlie Kirk stood, not because of his name or his platform, but because of the family who never let him fall. As the years passed, Charlie Kirk found himself reflecting more often, not on stages, not in front of cameras, but in the quiet moments at home. Late nights in the living room after the children had gone to bed, he would sit with Erica, the hum of silence wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. "Do you ever think about what legacy we'll leave behind?" Charlie asked one evening, his voice softer now, stripped of the passion that roared when he was behind a podium. Erica leaned back against the couch, her eyes calm but thoughtful. "All the time," she admitted. "But not in the way the world measures legacy. For me, it's not about headlines or history books. It's about whether our children will remember a home filled with love. Will they remember us praying with them when they were scared? Will they remember laughter at the dinner table, even on the hardest days?" Charlie nodded, the weight of her words settling deep inside him. "I think about that too. And I realize, family is the only audience that matters forever. Crowds cheer and then forget. Critics shout and then move on. But the love we build here, this is eternal." Erica reached for his hand. "That's the storm's secret, isn't it? The world tries to shake us, but when love and faith anchor us, nothing can tear us apart." Charlie smiled. "Exactly. And you know, I've learned something from you, Erica. I used to think strength was loud, big speeches, bold stands. But real strength, it's quiet. It's found in holding on. It's in forgiveness. It's in showing up every day even when it's hard." Erica's eyes glistened, and she squeezed his hand. "Then we've both learned. Because I've discovered that loyalty isn't just standing beside someone when it's easy. It's staying even when the storm feels endless. That's what makes a family." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence only love can hold. Outside, the wind rustled against the windows, but inside their home, peace reigned. Charlie thought about the storms they had weathered, the attacks, the doubts, the moments of exhaustion. He also thought about the victories. The first time he held his child, the way Erica's laughter could still light up the darkest day, the steady rhythm of family prayers whispered into the night. If the world asked him what his greatest accomplishment was, he knew the answer. It wasn't a speech, a debate, or even the movement he had helped build. His greatest accomplishment was sitting right there beside him. His wife, his children, his family. Looking at Erica, he whispered, "If everything else disappeared tomorrow, as long as I still had this, still had you, I'd be the richest man alive." Erica leaned against him, resting her head on his chest. "And that's the legacy we leave. Not perfection, not fame, but love. That's the story our children will carry long after we're gone." Charlie kissed the top of her head, holding her close as the night deepened around them. For the first time in a long time, he felt no need to be anywhere else. The storm could rage outside, the world could debate endlessly, but here, in the quiet glow of love, he had already won.